back to Market on Close. I'm Sam Bartis, live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Trilogy Metals is rallying over 200% on the day after the announcement that the US government will take a 10% stake in the company and invest $35.6 million to support mining exploration in Alaska's Ambler mining district. It's time now for Overlooked Stocks, and I'm joined by Tsilis, Senior Markets Correspondent, to tell us about Trilogy Metals and I suppose the significance of this deal, George.
Well, I think the significance is that the Trump administration is extremely active to secure assets like minerals as well as rare earth metals and investing directly into private companies using public capital to make sure companies like Intel, for instance, in the semiconductor space, maintain viability. But it's essentially another deal that the Trump administration has put forth to basically begin the production of stranded assets, which are owned by Trilogy Metals. So it's a Vancouver-based company, Canadian company. They actually own a mineral rights asset in a large basin of cobalt copper. And cobalt is essentially a rare earth metal that is used for strengthening other metals, but it's also very corrosion resistant. And it has very unique magnetic properties, which are used for everything from, for instance, MRIs for medical use, but also lithium batteries in electric vehicles. So this is another deal that the Trump administration's put forth to take ownership claims of a certain amount of equity. In yesterday's announcement, they talked about initially a $36.5 million equity stake with about a 7.5% additional warrants, which again are contingent based. And that was based about 10% based upon yesterday's close in market cap, which now the company is worth over $1 billion, considering the 200+% move the stock has made today. But I think this just shows the power of the deep pockets of the United States government, as well as the Trump administration's vision to bring more security to the rare earths and mineral space across the board in various industries. This includes, of course, lithium, with their stake in Lithium Americas, but also potentially other rare earth mining companies like MP Materials that took a stake, but also U.S. Rare earth mining company that is speculated to take, or potentially they'll take a stake in. But if you look at the company, these assets have been stranded for quite some time because there had not been an approval to build conveyance or a road through the BLM land. They actually got approval for this back in September. And it looks like they're going to proceed to unstrand these assets and begin extracting them and transporting them probably in the next few years. And of course, the U.S. government involvement has pushed the stock price considerably to the upside today as a result of the action.
Seems to be a recurring theme that we've seen playing out, particularly in recent months, of strategically important industries and sectors, materials, where the U.S. sort of got a bit of a wake-up call, I suppose, with this reliance on China and now needs to do something about it with Intel, Lithium Americas, and now this. I'm just wondering what you make of these huge moves that we've seen off the back of these announcements, George. I mean, what it tells us about how investors feel about, this whole national security campaign and the efforts that we're seeing from the Trump administration to compete with China.
Yeah, so, you can't talk about the politics. Obviously, the Trump administration wants to move away from reliance on China for rare earth metals. And many other countries may be doing the same thing just because of, geopolitical tensions that could erupt in that region of the world. And, of course, some failed relationships. But nonetheless, the stock is moving higher. This one in particularly moving higher considerably just because of the value of yesterday's closing market cap. It was around $360 million roughly. So it's not too large, or it was not too large. So you do see sort of a magnified move as a result of that. The other thing is, if you look at the value of these assets on the balance sheet as of last quarter reported, it was around $140 million. So now it's trading at around 8 or 9 times those assets. And now there's more visibility to recover them, which again increases the economic returns to investment to transport them to market. The challenge is right now, if you look at the revenue for the business, there isn't any. And so you have to time and look at the risks right now of the price movement relative to when those revenues will be generated. And of course, costs will be embedded in generating those revenues. But like I said, they're still away from constructing an access road. And so that may take years. So for what it's worth, yeah, the price action today is great for investors who have had it. But you've got to keep in mind that there are no revenues to speak of, and that can create sort of a stationary condition in the stock. In fact, it also could move lower just based on time, the time value of money.
Yeah, you raised such an important point there. I'm just wondering also, as we look across this as a broader sort of long-term theme, it's no secret that the Trump administration has wanted to do this for some time, but given the price action we've seen off the back of these stories, what does it sort of tell you right now about some of the renewed investor trust and sort of buying into these types of growth stories?
Well, I'm not going to say what I think about, our government using public money to invest in private capital. That's another conversation for another day. But I will say this, the U.S. government, in theory, has unlimited funds. So if they're putting forth funds to invest, and let's make an assumption that the government wishes to pay patronage to the taxpayer by, giving these dividends and profits back to the Treasury, you could make the case that the investment they're making is something they're going to stick with until it makes a profit, because it would be bad, I think, from a public relations standpoint, to have losses on these capital. But I'm not saying that they're going to make a profit, but I think they're probably going to stick with this kind of investment to make a profit and to show that the taxpayers that they're doing the right thing with the taxpayer money. So for what it's worth, again, from the private investor standpoint, private investors will flow where there's capital, and if there's money, big backers, the U.S. government in these projects, that's why we're seeing big moves. And some of these moves have been in the hundreds of percent range. I'm going to look at Lithium Americas, MP Materials. LAC doesn't have any revenues either. MP Materials does, but both those names have moved up tremendously since the announcement of the equity stake, as well as MP Materials having continued moving the price action higher because of opening up the rare earth mining and, of course, transportation markets for their product.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that the US government has also set its sights beyond these borders and also looking at Australian critical mineral companies too, buying equity stakes there. That seems to be the conversation as well. But I suppose it's critical for a reason. Thank you so much, George, for breaking that story down.